Welcome to episode 8 of season 2 of Into the Metaverse. Today we are diving much deeper into NFTs and the next generation of creators with a really incredibly exciting guest, Sutu. Sutu uses art and technology in new ways to tell stories. He has been commissioned by the likes of Marvel, Google, and Disney, among others, to create VR art for properties such as Doctor Strange, Ready Player One, and many more. He also created 3 VR documentaries. Sutu holds an honorary doctorate of digital media from Central Queensland University in Australia. He's a Sundance and Tribeca Fellow, and he's the co-founder of iJack, an art and technology company specializing in immersive art, experiences, and creator tools for augmented reality and Web3. His latest product, which we're going to talk about today, Neonz, explores the full potential of an AR Metaverse. Sutu, welcome. Exciting to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Jan. I'm so happy to be talking to you, mate. It's going to be fun.
All right. So before diving into it, we have a short announcement from our friends at Roundhill Investment.
This podcast is brought to you by Roundhill Investments, the advisor to the Roundhill Ball Metaverse ETF. The Roundhill Ball Metaverse ETF, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol METV, is the largest dedicated metaverse fund in the United States. The ETF tracks an index developed by Ball Metaverse Research Partners, a metaverse-focused indexing and research company headed by industry expert Matthew Ball. For a prospectus and more information, please visit roundhillinvestments.com/ETF/METV. Read carefully. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses carefully before investing. Distributor Foreside Fund Services, LLC.
Okay, Sutu, jumping straight into our first favorite topic, which this is how we start every podcast episode with a question that we ask all of our guests. And, we've been fortunate to speak to really a lot of brilliant minds to really help us put together this consensus around the whole metaverse concept. And so for you as Sutu, as a creator, what is the metaverse in your mind?
Well, I'll give you 2 answers. So because I'm a big sci-fi nerd, I will say that the metaverse is a term that was coined from the Snow Crash book by Neil Stephenson. And that described like an immersive VR world that you could seamlessly move through digital experiences as an avatar. It's definitely the model for what we are starting to see come about as the metaverse today. But the metaverse can not only incorporate VR, it can also incorporate AR. I'm super excited about the AR potential. One of the reasons is more people have mobile devices to access AR, so I actually feel like it will proliferate a lot faster, whilst people are still kind of getting into VR, so there's a lot less headsets around there. But I also see the term being used like pretty flexibly these days, so it can also incorporate Webgl experiences like Decentraland and Sandbox. And I think that's fine, like it's a starting point, but what really helps us to understand what the metaverse is used for is, well, one of the things that I like is this concept that the metaverse might not be centralized, it'll be decentralized. And what will make it decentralized is our digital assets being able to move from one digital world to the next. And that's going to be the biggest task for us in the next 10 years, like creating interoperability. So if we have an avatar, how can it work on one platform, but then suddenly work on the next? And that's a big design challenge that all of us creators have to help solve together.
You've touched upon multiple super important things, and also on the fact that we're not talking about one form factor or device, which leads me to kind of the follow-up question on this kickoff question, which is, now that we've heard your point of view on what is the metaverse, what do you think or believe that the metaverse is not?
Well, I guess I'll say what I don't want the metaverse to be, and I don't want it to be decentralized on one platform. Like, I think there's a big race right now for companies like Meta to say, we're the metaverse and we've got the audience because we have our Facebook audience, and it's true, like they're going to be a big presence in the metaverse virtual world, but then, you could also include like Minecraft in that. They've been doing it for a long time. They got an enormous audience, but they're all siloed off. They're not communicating to one another. You can't take your Minecraft avatar and seamlessly walk into the metaverse. You know what I mean? So one thing I don't want is just to be existing on one platform. And the reason why that's super important is, for example, right now, I've got an audience on Instagram, but I can't take that audience over to Twitter, for example. I have to build up that audience again. But as we start to build an audience around our decentralized assets like NFTs, as those NFT move from one platform to the next, our audience can come with us. And as a creator, it makes it a lot easier for us. And like right now, as I've been creating a lot of digital experiences, like if I want to have a AR experience on one platform like Snap, if I wanted to then bring it onto Niantic or something like that, I would have to recode it, do a lot of reformatting, and make it work with the rules of that platform. So I really hope that we can get to a point where we can just seamlessly move from one platform to the next and proliferate the visibility of all our work across multiple platforms.
I think you hit on a lot of really important things in the last two answers. First you talked about AR and kind of leveraging the devices we have, but I also think, and we talked about this, on This Week in the Metaverse, we talked about Apple, is, I just think that humans by nature are social. And so VR, locking yourself away, hurts the ability for humans to be naturally social, whereas AR, using it in the real world to augment our physical world, is such a more natural expression of technology and how we think about the metaverse. So for me, that's extremely important. As Yon said, it's not a single device, but it's, we talked about this with Mark Petit from Epic Games. It's using real-time 3D software and other technologies to bridge the physical and the digital worlds together. And I think that's a really powerful concept. And, you also talked about, in your second answer about creators and empowering creators in the metaverse. And I think that is something that is extremely important, particularly as we look at we can call it the Web 2 era or whatever we want to call it, the social mobile era. We have these walled garden platforms, Facebook, Google, etc., that control all the economics. And, YouTube, for example, pays out very little relative to how much comes in, right, into creators and everyone. And so, Facebook Meta is even worse for creators. And so, if we can, break down those walled gardens and really empower creators like yourself, I think that's something that's extremely powerful for the metaverse.
Thank you so much. I hope a lot of people are listening. But in defense of VR, I will say like VR has so much potential to create like these connected experiences. I was fortunate to work on the VR experience for Ready Player One. I created it with The Wave, who's famous for doing virtual concerts. And in that experience, like after we created the visuals, I just got to hang out at the party because someone else was doing the live VJing. And there was one moment which was really memorable for me. We had created these kind of like VR drugs, like little trips. And I remember going up to just a stranger. I was like, hey, you want to have a trip? And I'm holding this little sphere out in front of me. It's like a little plasma looking metasphere thing. And you see his little avatar hand kind of hesitate for a second. He's like, and then you see his hands like slowly reach into the sphere. And then the sphere starts, suddenly the concert environment disappears around us. We're in another world when we're both touching the sphere. And then the sphere gets stuck to our little avatar hands. And as we're moving our hands around, it's stretching every which direction. And he's like, what the heck is going on? It was really funny, but he was genuinely like, whoa, this is a moment. What the heck is going on? And I thought like, that was like very authentic, like shared moment. Like I remember that very fondly. So I thought like, for me, that was like one of the first times it felt like I was in a real place in VR. So definitely like that's the baseline for where we have to go up from. But for me, how do we leverage that sort of experience, take it to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. Yon talked about this, although we both agree that the metaverse is device agnostic, there are specific experiences like what you're describing that will be exceptionally immersive with VR and be really good in VR, and we just need to find those. I don't think, floating heads in Facebook Horizon going to meetings is the killer app of VR, but what you're talking about where you can, connect with other people is powerful.
Well, but then at the same time, like kind of sadly, what's happened is Wave have discontinued their VR concert experience as they got more funding and investment. Their investors wanted them to reach more people, and there wasn't like enormous reach on VR, so they kind of discontinued the VR. They might bring it back because I'm still in touch with them. They say, oh yeah, we'll probably bring it back. But in the meantime, like they're focusing on just streaming a pancake vision of their immersive 3D environments just to YouTube and to their own website and things like this. So I also like that was a real groundbreaking sort of metaverse style VR experience when it first launched, and it still stands out in my mind as like what a metaverse, like a VR metaverse should be like. And it's just a shame that that's kind of faded away now. I hope it comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubts that VR is going to, as a form factor, as an experience layer that we could be fully immersed in, unlike augmented reality that is more layered on top of our physical environment. I have no doubt that it's going to keep getting better, and everyone is looking forward to see what companies like Apple is going to do. And I think that's part of the beauty. I think there's going to be certain use cases for different form factors, if it's AR or mobile or VR, and ultimately, in my mind, all of those things are going to integrate and interact with one another. Like, when I think about the metaverse, it's not just the ability to move around my digital assets from one platform to another, but it's also how is it being manifested in those different form factors, right? I get to experience myself in one way in VR, and I think ultimately that needs to be layered on our physical environment, and I can access it from mobile phone. I mean, hell, I can access it from, touch display in autonomous vehicles, 10 years from now, because, everything is going to be essentially a display that we're going to want to access. And so to me, the metaverse is also like how it's all interconnected on digital layering, on reality, fully virtual reality, accessible through mobile, accessible through different form factors. Obviously, the common denominator is that 3D immersion, which I think we believe a big transition of the internet into the metaverse is that transition from 2D to 3D that I don't think everyone necessarily subscribed to, but we definitely have a point of view that the 3D internet is a big component of the metaverse, and we talked about that at length in previous episodes with folks like Rev, who run simulation and Omniverse at NVIDIA, and Craig, the chief business officer of Roblox, and other folks. And so I think the real exciting things are still ahead of us. So which is why it's so great to be at this point of time where everything feels so nascent but still transformative.
Yeah, and I think that like the 3D spatial element is really uncharted territory for like what kind of impact that might have on our minds. Like the way that you move through space can really help to consolidate memories, like things like this in psychology. They'll talk about like memories being associated to spaces and places and things like this. I remember used to do a lot of workshops with young people. I remember working with this guy. He was about 15. We couldn't really get him to sit in front of a computer for very long. Like he was a really athletic kid, just didn't want to sit down in front of a computer. But as soon as I got him into VR and got him VR painting, because he was able to use his whole body and move through the environment, I got him doing some tilt brush painting. He just put on his headphones and stayed in there for 2 hours, and everyone was watching him just going, holy crap, we've never ever seen him focused like this for so long. And I just felt like this was really interesting. Here's this kid that just couldn't like stay engaged on a computer, but suddenly when you could involve his body in that, you know, it's his way of learning and remembering was totally exercised by being able to move his body. And I think like that unto itself, as we start to think about interacting in spatial metaverse environments, is going to be really transformative for our minds.
So, Sutu, I think I want to switch gear and talk a bit about, like, for you, what it's like to be, a creator, right? This is an amazing time, as Matthew kind of mentioned, to be a creator, because there's just so many possibilities, so many technologies. And, one of the things that we are so enthusiastic about with the metaverse is, the further empowerment and democratizing the ability of creators to use real-time 3D software and putting the power of these tools that until today has really been in the hands of few developers and organization, and putting it in the hands of millions of, for lack of a better description, millions of Sutus around the world, even though there is only one Sutu. And so, a couple of questions about this. Like, so as a creator, how do you think this is going to impact the sort of the broader creator economy or creator movement, and what type of opportunities you see for yourself that really excites you as a creator?
Well, I was thinking as you're describing that, for some reason I was thinking about like the Blender model of like just making it open source, and like how amazing that's been for the industry and for young people to get in there, to have access to a software that is competing against like the best softwares like Cinema 4D and stuff like this that's super expensive. But because it's been open source and it's just attracted a massive young demographic, all these youngsters getting into it. For me, a bit older, I love like learning Blender, and I just find like I Google anything and some young person's gone and made a tutorial video about it. Like I could like, it's like the internet university is just so alive and well with that model of like open source software. And now I've been seeing really quickly like Blender's features and the creator features, like all the plugins created by creators and stuff that I use all the time, and shaders and things like this. It's just really opened my mind to like what happens when you make things open source and how that can help creativity and innovation just explode rapidly. So I think that's one of the exciting things. For me, I'm like a moth to a flame whenever it comes, like new technology comes out. I just can't help myself. I've got to go and have a little play, see what I can do with it, kick the wheels. Generally, like, right now I've been getting back into augmented reality. Like I was on a VR bender for a while. Now I'm getting back into augmented reality and playing. I'm really interested in shared augmented reality experiences. Like you said, like how can we collaborate together in the real world on digital stuff, and see that with zero latency. Like those are some of the cool creative and technical challenges. I'm also super interested in the generative and AI side of things. We just did our first generative project recently, and for me as an artist, we created our own tool with our own rules about how to mix my art, like sample my art and then mix it. And I felt like I was collaborating with the machine, but the machine knew all about me, sort of thing. So it's like, I was like very quickly, like what would have taken me a year to do, I was able to see all these iterations of my own work. And I was like, finally, like this is what I've been dreaming about. Like I wrote comic books early on where I would, like my characters would be talking to an AI saying, you've watched me design this day in and day out. Can you just help me out and, color the character or something like this, or, do some of the tedious work that I have to do on a daily basis. I feel like we're going to get to a point where we'll have little AI assistants that can help us out with our aesthetic or our little tedious tech tasks that we lose so much time doing every day. So I'm excited about all those types of things.
One thing I wanted to, dovetail into off of that, because I think it does nicely, is, and now we're going to bring in NFTs and Web3. It took us 20 minutes, which I'm surprised it took us 20 minutes to get here. But, the concept of intellectual property, IP, with Web3 technologies in the metaverse, because this is something that we talked about with Ryan Wyatt from Polygon on the second episode of this season. But traditionally IP is owned by someone and it's static, and it can evolve, stories can evolve, but like Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse. But with NFTs and with Web3, IP can evolve over time. That and the story gets logged into the blockchain with it. So I just, Yon, you talked about that as a powerful concept of rethinking what IP is. Sutu, how do you think about the concept of IP in the Web3 metaverse?
Yeah, it's been a big learning curve for me, to be honest. Like, I'm used to writing stories and directing stories and being really like the captain of the ship, really keen to steer the direction things are going in. And now I've kind of had to turn that whole concept up on its head and think about how I can do collaborative world building with my community, and what are the sort of the rules around that. I think, like, we, for example, right now have our IP terms and conditions getting edited by a lawyer, like, for when we release that. We've been researching a lot about how different NFT projects have been approaching it. General consensus is, like, if you do like a PFP project, like a generative avatar project or something like that, then as the creator, you'll carve out the rights to keep the overall branding and access to the characters for your own creations. And then any of those characters that have been purchased by the community, they can own the IP rights to exercise whatever they like with those characters. And then you kind of go into the terms a bit further, and then you're encouraging not to do illicit content, just to keep the overall brand like savory and not going to some dark territory and stuff. I think, like, it's really interesting, like what we're seeing, like with the folks that got in a bit earlier, like the Bored Apes guys, is like Coinbase has signed 3 Bored Ape films to come out, which is interesting. There's like Jenkin the Valet is another film that's coming out. It might be the case that a year from now we're totally exhausted of Bored Apes, or it might be that each of these films just help to lift the entire brand, and that's what brings value to it as a collective, collaborative IP, and it might excite, and activate all those other owners of Bored Apes. And I think it's really too early to tell what this beast might turn into, but I think that's the exciting time that we're in right now, that there's no map for this territory, we can carve the way, sort of thing. And the other thing that, like, I hear different scenarios all the time, like the guys from SupDucks, for example, like they're talking to, I think it was like Fox Network, about doing an animated series and then paying royalties to any of the collectors, SupDucks, who own a SupDuck. Like, they get, like, if their SupDuck appears in the animated series, then they will get a little payment, like an extra would in a movie or something. I thought, oh, this is so interesting. I wonder how long Hollywood's going to let this go on for, because they're very cagey about their profits and stuff. So, I think it's great, though, that, people in this position to set a precedent that's, really beneficial for your community and your supporters. That's definitely what we should aim high right now and set really solid precedents that's benefiting the community.
Yeah, and look, I think we're just scratching the surface with how these brands and IP looks like. There's definitely been a bunch of pioneers, but I still think we're, super early. There's just, majority of the world doesn't even know what we're talking about, right? When it comes to these new frontiers of, NFTs and communities. And I want to touch upon another element, which is, how it all fits into like other frameworks of organizing communities, using DAOs and things like that. And but the fundamental phenomena, which is absolutely fascinating, is the fact that other people who invest in a collection or own an NFT can go on and do so many more things with the NFT, and creating completely new brands on top of brands launch as an NFT collection, and you've mentioned a few of these examples with, Bored Ape, but I think it happens in other collections as well, in other communities, and I think there's going to be there's just room for so much innovation and productization of what could be built, what should be built. I think we're going to see millions of different things coming out in the next few years that reimagine what you can do with these things, and so that leads me to talk about that other framework that is really starting to emerge, and a lot of people talk about it. There's a bunch of people who experiment with it, but in your mind, do you have a point of view on how DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization, how that fits into this collaborative environment, these tokenized IP, decentralized brands, however you want to define it? Do you have a point of view on DAOs, how you're thinking about potentially in the future using DAO frameworks to build and expand and invite and create more structure to that collaborative community development?
Yeah, I've still got to learn a lot about it. I've been paying attention and seeing what kind of innovations in that space that I like. I mean, I would definitely experiment with it at some point. I do like the idea of creating a democratic world building with your community. In my community, there's just so many and really brainy people that are really excited, got so many ideas to share. It's wonderful to get that kind of feedback and enthusiasm, and it should be rewarded. We're not going to take ideas and run with it. There's an opportunity to allow for the whole community to feel comfortable about sharing their ideas and know that it's being invested and they're part of that investment, and they'll get a return on that investment by participating. I think that's the promise of it. And then from just the day-to-day, the idea that you would create a proposal and the community asserts their governance power to make decisions about that proposal, decide whether it's going to go ahead, or maybe you present a few options and then you discover what resonates with the majority of people, and then that kind of steers the direction of it. Again, in terms of if I'm the one presenting proposals, then I think I'm still grappling with that idea of wanting to really establish the world and try to find a framework so that I can create some consistency with the aesthetic and the law and stuff like that. I feel that's where I'm sort of most hesitant to dive in. I want to see if I can at first create a framework that might inspire the rest of the community to then participate in. If I set some basic rules for my world building, and then see if people would subscribe to build within that framework. So that could be interesting. But at the same time, I like the idea that when it's completely open, you might be surprised by just the inventiveness of the community as well. So this is where I just feel me personally, I've got to just either loosen up or get smart about some cool way to approach it still.
I think we're still skimming the surface on what all these things like DAOs can look like, and what they can mean, and what these types of communities can actually look like, and ownership, and what can be voted on versus what can't. These are all different things that we're still trying to figure out. And I think, as a creator, you want to have control. You want to be expressive, and you want your expressiveness to be shown in your work. And on the one hand, it's fantastic, as you said, if people can weigh in and vote and have a say in that. But on the other side of the coin, it can be a hindrance. It can kind of stymie your creativeness and your vision. And so I think where we're at right now, as you kind of alluded, we just need to learn more, and we just need to understand how these things can really take shape and what looks best for each instance. I don't think it's going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. We saw with the other side NFT launch from Yuga Labs, the Metaverse land for the Bored Apes and whatnot, right? Afterwards, when they had all the issues with gas fees, they're like, oh, well, we'll think about fixing that later, and the DAO can vote on that. That's kind of a cop out, right? That's you just raised at a $4.5 billion valuation. The company, you raised a lot of money. you did all this, and then you kind of just cop out and say it's the DAOs, and obviously that could be true. That could be the way that it's structured. But, I do think that, we're still kind of figuring out exactly who needs to be behind what decision.
Yeah, and I think also just from even with DAOs aside, like I've been thinking about user-generated content and just like how people giving my community a framework for them to express themselves with the content that they own. So like I come from an art and technology, I own an art and technology company, and we build like tools, then we have communities that use those tools, and we're constantly trying to figure out how to make these new technologies more accessible to people. Like we have an AR tool, and in 3 simple steps you can create AR, and that's a very quick entry point into AR in comparison to going through Lens Studio or something like that, which is more like a little Unity kind of program. Yeah, so I mean, like one scenario in my world, for example, we're creating like a game right now, and then there's been ideas thrown around like, what if it's a speed run game? So it's a bunch of obstacles and ramps and stuff like that, and you got to get the fastest time. But the obstacles in that are prefabricated assets. So essentially our community could create levels themselves, and then we might vote on which level is the coolest. And then my company would kick in and say, okay, well, this is the coolest level designed by the community. Let's boost this and host a kick-ass game tournament that might go for a week, where we highlight this community member's awesome level, and let's do a tournament here. And that's where my company would boost back in to really spotlight the user-generated content from one of our community members. That sort of thing I really like. I still get to maintain a level of control of the aesthetic and stuff, but I'm giving like a lot of creative power to our community to express themselves within that sort of framework. So that's kind of one example that I'm kind of leaning towards at the moment, just to see how it all pans out, I guess. Everything's like a bit of an experiment for me right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of everything in the metaverse, not just Web3, crypto, blockchain, is experimental, and so we're trying to, figure out what works best. I wanted to go back to something you said in the beginning in your first answer, and I think it's something that Yon and I and a lot of our guests agree is table stakes to making the metaverse, the true vision in the metaverse, come to fruition is interoperability. Interoperability has a lot of different definitions to a lot of different people, depending on what type of role you're in. If you're an engineering person, you think about it like as a software level, right? If you're a creator, you think about it as bringing assets from different, platforms to another. You talked about that. In your view, why is interoperability so important to making the metaverse, come to fruition? And how does that play out in your work? And then as a dovetail to that, the question is always kind of like, well, interoperability, people go straight to NFTs, they go straight to decentralized technologies as a means to make that work. Do you think we need NFTs to make interoperability work from the creator's perspective?
I think it's one of the most promising technologies we have, to be honest. Like, it's an asset, it's a bunch of metadata. The metadata could help communicate the functionality of the asset as you try to plug it into different platforms. I think the biggest challenge for us when we talk about interoperability is that as an industry, we'll have to establish new standards. And it might be, the same way that years ago, people decided that web would use HTML, and then that became a universal language for the web. We will have to all kind of agree on like what will be the universal language for Web3. But then once, and we will figure it out through trial and error and a lot of people trying things, and we'll probably reach some consensus at some point. And we're seeing it already starting to happen with 3D formats like GLTF being widely adopted. But then you have like, if you have like an avatar as a GLTF, if you want to get that avatar moving, it's dependent on the programming language of each platform that it's on. And then trying to find a universal standard for like a language to move an avatar or things like this, that's kind of like the next challenge. But right now for me, I'm just I like the idea Well, I see sort of two things happening. Things like images and videos, we can see really quickly. It's easy just to have them pop up in lots of different platforms and as NFTs. That one's been pretty widely adopted, those formats, just being able to place your images on walls in virtual environments and things like that. I'm exploring things like you buy like a 2D animated GIF NFT of mine, and that might be a character wearing a gas mask, and the gas mask is a trait that's a part of the metadata. But then when you sync your wallet with my Webgl Game, for example, the game sees your NFT, it manifests a 3D avatar knowing the NFT's avatar ID, and can see the trait metadata. So your character appears with the gas mask on in the game, and then you're running through the game. If you go through the gas zone, you're fine. If your avatar happened to not have a gas mask, then your player speed would be cut down by half. So you can, even with that limited metadata, like just knowing the traits, most of mine have like 5 to 8 traits or whatever, I can build gameplay utility around just knowing those traits. But in order to get that avatar working, like we're coding that in the game, and it's not like I could take my avatar and just have it appear in Decentraland and all that functionality would be there. I would literally have to start a partnership with Decentraland and talk to them and communicate, like, this is what my avatars can do, blah, 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 and try to get them to replicate the same functionality on their platform. So right now it's a very slow process, but some information is shared easily.
So Sutu, we're inching toward kind of the last piece of the episode, and so, but before we get to that, I really want to give you a couple minutes to kind of share with our audience what really is the Sutuverse, what is your vision for Sutuverse, and then after you do that and share kind of a bit more about what really you're building, I have an exciting special announcement that I want to share with our community.
Awesome. Yeah. So the Sutuverse is my sort of excuse to dive into Web3, to dive into this metaverse concept, to kick the wheels, to do a lot of experiments. Because I'm creating a lot of real-time engine 3D interactive environments all the time, I thought, well, should I try to build on an existing platform, or should I just build my own platform? I thought I would build my own platform so that I can, during this time where we're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible, I didn't want to be limited to the restraints of other platforms. I wanted to use my space as the space to innovate and to create new standards for things that might become popular. So I'll describe some of the things that I've got going on in the Sutuverse. Does that sound about right, Jan?
Yeah. We definitely want you to share a bit more. We definitely want you to share a bit more about the Sutuverse, and then I know that there's also a really special announcement we're going to make today for the first time, kind of an exclusive, which we're going to call Into the Sutuverse. So, take us through that journey, and let's tell our community all about it.
Right. So the Sutuverse right now is it's encompassing AR and WebGL environments, so 2 separate environments. It's a place for me to display my art. I've got a bunch of NFTs that I've created over the last year, and then I've got my my avatar project called Neonz. And Neonz is the project that I've been putting the most work into. I've been super busy building some Neonz AR experiences. So when you, like what I was describing before, when you buy like a Neonz NFT, it's a 2D profile picture of one of these futuristic or retro-futuristic avatars. They all have different sort of cyberpunk-like traits. Some of them have like futuristic VR goggles or antennas on their ears, or some gas masks and things like this. It's kind of been described as a bit like Tron meets Mad Max or something like this. And then what happens is you've bought the NFT, it's on your crypto wallet, you sync your wallet with my iJack augmented reality app, And then suddenly I've got two experiences happening on my augmented reality app. One of the experiences is that you can place your neons in the real world, kind of like a neon sign, and it's shining light on the physical environment. We use surface tracking on the ground and on the walls, so the light of the neon actually goes onto those walls, so it looks like it's really there. We've also used that same technology if you happen to have like a device with a LiDAR on it, like the latest iPhones. That the LiDAR has actually got really impressive depth tracking, so we can then cover those surfaces with animated world effects. And those world effects are another NFT that people can purchase as a part of Sutuverse. They're called light fields. And the light fields, we've got 3 of them at the moment. And that's a collaboration that I've been doing with different shader programmers. And I like the idea that down the track I can invite more shader programmers to create more of these cool world effects that people can activate. And then the second AR experience that I've got going on is when you sync your wallet to my AR app, it manifests a 3D version of the neons on your face as a face filter. And I've got all 10,000 neons generating inside my AR app. And when I say 10,000, if you understand kind of the concept of generative project, you might only draw, say, 150 traits, but then it's this process of combining those traits in different combinations to generate a much larger number of avatars. So you might mix like a gas mask with some little circular goggles or something, or you might mix some crazy hair with a VR headset, and they might be different colors and have different animations and stuff. And then finally, the third thing that's coming out is a Webgl game. And this is the big metaverse beast that I've been working on for the last 3 months. And that's, I decided deliberately to make it a Webgl game because I know that a lot of my audience and community, it was the easiest thing for everybody to access. So you just sync your wallet in the browser and suddenly a 3D environment appears. It's the Sutuverse, it's dubbed the Sutuverse. You arrive in the Sutuverse lobby. You will see that there's a couple of portals in the lobby to go to some different experiences. And the main experience is my game, which is called Circuit Breaker, and that's the Neonz game. And then you walk through the portal and it loads up the game. And then you're in the game and you see a countdown, and then you got to run for your life and try to get the fastest time going through this crazy futuristic Tron-like maze. And I've built all these funny little shortcuts and Easter eggs in there, so you could literally go 100 different ways to get through. So I'm really excited just to see what times people get, but also I'm hoping like people will screen capture their gameplay and share the gameplay, and let us in on some of the little secrets they discover, this kind of thing.
So most importantly, Sutu, where are folks are going to be able to find it? Where should we send our community to go check out?
Yeah, the easiest place to go to right now is neonz.xyz. This is where everything will be happening. And the big announcement right now, Neonz XYZ is kind of like the light version of the website. But then on the 17th of June, the website's going to transform, and that's when we will begin the summer of neons. So all of our new experiences will be coming live from June 17th, and we're hoping, like, we're going to be releasing a bunch of experiences over the next kind of 2 months. And that's what, like, everything I've been working on all year is like finally coming to fruition. And we've been pretty quiet in the Discord and stuff, but now it's like time to hype it up again and say, hey, we're coming out of our little caves, we're ready to share it with the world, let's do this.
Amazing. So we're gonna also share links to this in the Substack when we release this recording for our community, and we're gonna put the link to the Neonz XYZ. Also, hopefully by the time the episode is live, we're going to have Sutu's TED Talk that he gave in the most recent global TED event. So hopefully that's going to be live. And if not, we're going to reshare it on the Substack when the time comes. But in the meantime, Sutu, so many amazing things. Can't wait. When you said, Tron and Mad Max, I mean, for anyone who loves Tron and Mad Max or any of them, this needs to be super exciting. So, I look forward to the Pseudoverse and checking it out. And thank you so much for coming and sharing with us not only the amazing work you're doing, and you've been in these immersive worlds with art and tech for a while, and there's just so much to unpack. And so Matthew and I are both thrilled you came on board. We talked about the creator economy, about these technologies, what the metaverse actually means for people, and thank you for sharing these exclusive announcements about what's coming from the Sutuverse. So thank you so much, Sutu. We're gonna keep close tab, and I'm gonna go play some stuff in the Pseudoverse very soon.
Right on. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I can't wait to see you in there.